Good evening, folks. Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you get all things DutyRon. This guy right here, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload another video. Today, we're going to get into the home of Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach subject, perpetrator. I like to refer to him as perpetrator. They're at his home searching. Ed Wallace is a crime scene unit expert. He's a CSI expert. We got him here tonight. We're going to get to the tough questions. What could they possibly be getting out of this house some 13 or more years later? But before we get into it, Ed and I want to thank you, the Patreon supporters, channel members, the subscribers, the replay viewers, the moderators, the mod squad, some of the best on YouTube, and also to all of our friends who leave us comments and questions down below in the chat. Ed, how's it going tonight? How you doing? We got a caper on our hands here.
Oh yeah, big time caper. It's captivated the minds of many people, and that's all you hear people talking about. Today I did a training for over 200 school security personnel in Brooklyn, and everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any way you can go in any space where folks are not talking about it. The whole warehouse where I work, the warehouse workers, the executive staff, people are coming to me asking me about it because they're all aware of the YouTube channel that we have. Thanks to you and myself, Ed, we've become a little bit famous on Long Island here with some of our coverage. But all kidding aside, the situation at hand is we have multiple murders that took place some 13 plus years ago, and now you have a subject in custody, and you have police from local, state, and federal out at the house over in Long Island, and they're searching the home front and back. We're going to show some footage, some aerial footage. I want to play a little piece from this morning before we get into it, but Ed, I got a lot of questions for you, and I'm sure that our audience has a lot of questions. It looks like everyone's going nuts in the chat. What possibly could they be retrieving? But we'll get into that in a few minutes. I just wanted to play some local coverage. This is from Fox 5, and they talk a little bit about what's going on. This is from this morning.
To the Gilgo Beach murders, detectives are searching for more evidence to see if the suspect may be connected to other cold cases. Fox 5's Jody Goldberg has the latest from Long Island.
On Monday, a team of investigators, some in hazmat suits, continued to carefully comb through Rex Heuermann's home. They brought out guns along with other evidence that could help tie the 59-year-old architect to at least 3 of the Gilgo Beach murders. He's said to also be a prime suspect in a 4th.
It's scary, but, to know what was going on.
An attempt to deliver payroll checks to Heuermann's home on Monday afternoon was unsuccessful.
I looked at the name. I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is the same person.
Those who have seen the married father of 2 say he'd circle the park where kids would play sports.
He had the distinct truck, and he was a big guy in the truck, so it was something that you remember.
That truck, one of the key clues that helped investigators zero in on Heuermann after a witness said he was seen driving it with one of his victims.
It's like a movie. It's unbelievable.
Over in Amityville, police taped off 2 facilities where investigators searched storage lockers linked to Heuermann.
I don't know what's over there. They've been over there for 2 days. This is the 2nd day.
Roy Smith, who works across the street, recalls seeing him at the gas station.
I see him once or twice. I get to know memory face.
And it's the voice that TikTok user Dominique Vidal remembers.
Hey, this is Rex.
The interior designer described an odd telephone call and a voice message left by Heuermann, who was in the same networking group.
He did call me a couple of times.
Suffolk County District Attorney Raymond Tierney says it's just the beginning.
We have these 4 cases in our sights. We're going to complete that, and then we're going to keep on going.
And when asked how long the crime scene will be here, Detective Lieutenant Kevin Byer with the Suffolk County Police Department said, quote, "There's no end in sight." Now, anyone with any valuable information is asked to call Crime Stoppers. That number 800-220-TIPS.
So I'd like the mods to put in the chat 800-222 tips, 220 tips. I'm going to put it back just to make sure I got it right.
Stoppers, that number 800-220-TIPS.
220 tips. And I'm going to link that in the description. Ed, you heard what the commander of the homicide squad, the sergeant, lieutenant out in Suffolk County said there's no end in sight. We've seen in the Idaho case, in the Idaho 4, we saw that house for over a month being held, longer. What's your thoughts on out here in Massapequa Park, Long Island?
Well, first of all, can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me fine? Give me a 1 if you can hear me fine, or if you can't, let me know in the chat if you're not hearing me.
Yeah, we did a sound check before we went live. Anybody saying that you're low, Ed? Is that? I mean, I think you're good. Number 1 in the chat. We're going to wait for Joey Brooklyn or Josh.
All right, because I know the last show that we did, there was some issues with that. Anyhow, so it looks like you can all hear me. 5 by 5, Pete. Thanks, Lieutenant Pete. All right. So that said, so we have many bodies, but only 4 of them have been charged, and several of the bodies initially were dismembered. And
he's only been charged with 3 out of the 4.
Right. 3 out of the 4 of the bodies that were found in burlap bags and not dismembered. Okay. So, you could see the difference between how the crime scene here is being treated for what was happening in Idaho. You see the level of PPE, the personal protective equipment that the crime scene investigators are wearing at all the various locations that are involved in this investigation. Now, when I hear storage facilities, right away, my hair starts to stand on edge, because storage facilities and serial killers, well, that always rings
yeah,
it's something bad is here. Something bad is happening.
And I don't want to disrupt you, but I'm thinking of that school teacher in Staten Island. I forgot her name, but she was killed.
Right. She was killed by her husband and the husband's girlfriend, and out in Queens, I believe. And they wrapped her body in a
cool
rug, I believe, or something like that. And then they brought her out to Staten Island and put her body in a storage facility. But, like storage facilities have been notorious in the past with other killers and everything, where they take them in the dead of night and do their dirty deeds. And so the house is old. The house is run down. It looks like it's got a basement, and I've seen a lot of crime scene investigators going in and out of the basement in their tie-back suits and bringing stuff out. Now, and they got the vehicle from South Carolina. They're bringing it up. They're going to work the vehicle up and see how much more other evidence they can find. Now, with serial killers, sometimes they tend to take mementos of their victims.
Right.
And so maybe they're stored in the house. Maybe they're stored in the storage facility. Today, I understand the crime scene investigators and the detectives called the medical examiner out to one of the storage facilities
in Amityville.
And that's never a good sign. So if you're calling the medical examiners out, you kind of suspect that there might be evidence of human remains.
I want to just correct something, Ed, here quickly, because you hit on a great point. Because my wife said to me tonight before I came down into the studio, she said, well, maybe they just wanted the medical examiners there on scene just in case. And I said, you don't do that. They don't waste their time with what if, unless they had some good intel that something was there. Medical examiners come out. But like a Barbara Butcher won't just show up to a scene if they think there might be something there. Nassau or Suffolk, she said, might do things differently. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Do they bring the?
Yeah, I mean, you don't waste the time. You waste the time of those forensic professionals unless you found something.
Right.
Okay. Because first of all, they're very busy.
Right.
And they have to do autopsies and they have to generate reports. They may have to give testimony. So you don't call them out until you find something. Right. Unless it's an archaeological dig or an anthropological dig. For human remains, that's a different story. Okay, but in this case, as I said, it's kind of unusual to call them out to the scene unless they needed that expert opinion from the pathologist for something they found in the storage facility.
Absolutely. And I want to say thank you to Susan Wood for becoming a new member. And also, I wanted to thank Jeff Litweiler. He's our friend from Wyoming. I hear Kara in the background. Jeff says to both you and I, trophies, question mark, possible, Ed? Yeah, Ed just
Yes.
touched on it. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. They tend to do that to serial killers as momentums, and then they have like a scrapbook of what they've done. And also they tend to take newspaper clippings, make recordings of news shows, documentaries on their cases. Another thing, I found records of some of the searches that this guy has done.
Whew.
Okay, and it is crazy. So if I can just list some of them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it was documented and reported that he
searches by the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator, Rex.
By the alleged perpetrator. So he has several types of searches. Searches conducting counterintelligence on the task force investigating him, and then pornographic searches. So some of the stuff that he was searching for himself and the investigation. Why couldn't law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Long Island serial killer update 2022. America's 5 most notorious old cases. 8 terrifying active serial killers. Why can't find? Cops launched Gilgo Beach Homicide Investigation Task Force. Inside the Long Island serial killer and Gilgo Beach. So those were some of the searches that he was conducting counter intel on the investigators and what was going on with his case. Okay. Now, some of the more horrific pornographic stuff that he was searching. Mature escorts, Manhattan. Teen girl begging for rape and porn. So trigger alert, folks. Some of these things can be quite upsetting. Pretty girl with bruised face, porn. 10-year-old schoolgirl. Girl hogtied, tortured, porn. Girl with face beat up.
Jesus.
Chubby 10-year-old girl crying. Blonde hair girl, young, depressed. Teen girls, oiled bodies. Nude slave girls. And these are just some of his searches.
Despicable. You know, Ed, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, Rodney Harrison, said that he's a demon, an evil demon. There's probably much more that hasn't been released in the documents thus far, but they did release quite a bit. And we're going to get into that in the latter part of the show, whether we feel that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I think everyone that's here that's a regular knows that the experience of 2 New York City police detectives experienced that more information that you put out, the worse it is for the prosecutor, and it goes against a lot of the things that we know, and I'm scratching my head as to why they're putting out more, because it gives the defense team a lot of ammunition to claim that they won't get a fair trial, that all of the information is put out there in the early stages of this thing. We heard the police commissioner, Ed, say that he was proud of his detectives and the investigators. Yes, but the district attorney put all this stuff out, and again, keeping stuff close to the vest. They were proud that they were able to impanel a secret grand jury and that none of it leaked out. But now the cat's out of the bag, and I think that they may be giving up too much information, and hopefully I'm wrong. But I want to play.
Well, I thought that from the press conference with the district attorney. I thought he had given too much information, and now he's doing interviews on multiple news stations.
All over.
Yeah, I don't understand this. I've never seen this before.
Yeah, so we're scratching our heads, especially from the Northeast here. It's a Suffolk County District Attorney, and he definitely is. It's a fact. He's up for re-election shortly. So this might be just a way for him to say, look at what we accomplished. I hope not. One would hope not. But let's listen. Let's take a listen. This is from today.
After years of cold leads and wavering resources, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison came into office and changed all that. Dogged police work, coupled with interagency coordination, led investigators straight to Heuermann. but only after an alleged killer lived unnoticed in a quiet suburb of New York City. Architect by day, murderous sex predator by night. I spoke with Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison just a few moments ago.
He was somebody that was brought to our attention. There were a couple of subjects that we were looking at, but once we put the task force together and brought the right people into the room under the leadership of my Detective Lieutenant Kevin Byer, we were able to kind of narrow down on Mr. Heuermann and attach him to these killers, to the bodies that he killed.
But before the commission really got to work, he had been somebody you were aware of.
It wasn't him per se. I want to make sure that that's very clear. It was the vehicle that we were looking at, not necessarily the individual.
All right. You spent the weekend searching his home and a storage facility today. What were you looking for?
Anything that can kind of strengthen the case. Once again, there's a judicial process that's still ahead of us.
So Ed, there's a look at the backyard, and I clipped this news article because it was A, recent, and B, as you said in the beginning of the open here, that they were going into the basement. That's one of those storm like kind of stellar doors, leads right directly down to the basement. Any thoughts on what we're looking at here, Ed?
Well, you can see there, the CSIs are wearing their PPE and gloves, booties, the whole 9 yards. They're going in there and taking things out. I understand he had a large cache of weapons down there as well that had to all be removed. And I guess they're going to do a lot of background searches on these weapons to see if there's any that were illegally possessed and so forth. And also, there's the set of bodies that were dismembered out in Gilgo Beach, and then there was the bodies that were not dismembered and wrapped in what people keep calling burlap, but is now more accurately described as camouflaging net used for duck hunting and hiding boats and hiding duck hides for hunting that you can then stuff your leaves and your indigenous plant life into it to camouflage it for the area.
Right.
Yeah, Smitty, we don't know the actual number because it depends on who you listen to. We've heard anywhere, but there seems to be a large amount of firearms, but
right.
we don't know the exact number.
Exactly. We're going to stay away from those numbers because initially one of the officials, I don't know if it was the district attorney or the police commissioner, I personally remember hearing one of the officials say that he had permits for 92 weapons. Maybe the additional weapons were the long rifles that we saw them taking out. But why I stopped it here, Ed, is because upon further review of this looks like a bunch of things that are stuffed. Like it looks like that basement is stacked to the gills with these boxes, or
like a hoarder basement.
Basically, Chief Harrison, and I thank you for bringing that up. Chief Harrison made reference. I don't think it was in this interview. It was in an early morning on Fox. I watched it as I was going to get ready to go to the office. He called him, he used a nicer term. He said it was like a pack rat. It was his exact words. But I think what he really wanted to say was, this guy's a hoarder, because I feel that basement is packed to the gills. And that's why the lieutenant commander said, we are going to be here indefinitely. There's no end in sight to this.
Yeah, no, getting back to what I was saying earlier about the two different decedents that were found out in Gilgo Beach, dismembered and non-dismembered. What are the odds that two separate serial killers from the same community are using the same dumping ground, one dismembering bodies and one not dismembering bodies? I think you have a better odds of winning tonight's Powerball lottery
right.
than having that occur. And maybe initially, the dismembered bodies were the first set of this defendant's victims, and he initially was cutting them up. And then, he realized how much work was involved in it, and
how dirty it is,
and how messy it is. And he just decided, I'm not going to do this anymore, and I'll just, kill these victims, wrap them up, tape them, belt buckles, tape, whatever, and bind them and bring them out and dump them in the same area that I've been dumping the other bodies.
So this is, again, for the folks listening or just tuning in, this is just one of many possibilities. And
Right.
this is, then again, this is seasoned detective spitballing possibilities here. He could have started out hot, really heavy like that, and then digressed into something more simple or easier for disposal and so forth. It's a viable option here, and it could be very, very possible because, like you said, what are the odds that multiple serial killers just jumped on the bandwagon and said, "Oh, this looks like a great dumping ground. Let's just go and do." It's not. It's not a high probability. But I want the audience to listen to the rest of what the police commissioner says. And you know what? I like Rodney Harrison. I thought that he was a tightened up guy. And when we were working, Ed, I think he was just a sergeant or a captain, or like he was somewhere in between that executive rank. But he definitely wasn't the chief of detectives when I was there. So, but let's just take a listen to what else he has to say here.
Once again, there's a judicial process that's still ahead of us, or any other evidence that may be linked to other bodies, especially on that Ocean Parkway strip, where we still have an ongoing investigation of 6 other bodies that we have to continue to identify who the killer is.
As you know, serial killers often keep trophies from their killings. Were you looking for things like that as well?
Of course. Once again, is this any evidence be linked to the bodies that were discovered on Ocean Parkway or anywhere across the country? We want to try to link it to Mr. Heuermann. We're concerned. We don't know if these are the only ones that he killed, and we want to just make sure if there's other bodies out there that we have to address, we attach it to him and hold him accountable as well.
Yeah, that was one of the big questions I had even after your initial news conference on Friday.
And as you guys can see, when I took the ride with Mrs. DutyRon yesterday, we were on the south side driving up. And the bulk of the bodies that were recovered were on the north side, on the bay side. And there is a turnoff, and I wanted to keep this up because this is kind of like the area where I pulled off just a little bit past where Toddler and Jane Doe is. So at this curve right here, just a little bit before, I think it's right about right here where my mouse is. There's a turnaround, and there's not a lot of turnarounds on Ocean Parkway. But in that flooded area where I was, which led into that Oak Beach Association, there's a turnaround as soon as you come out. And if he came from the route that I went, yes, he would have had to turn around and come around and come back. There's a possibility if, in fact, he did drive down there from his residence, which we don't know, he could have went further east on Sunrise Highway and took Robert Moses Causeway down, and that would have brought him back way out of frame up here, and then he would have had to come back west. So it was just a possibility, and I just wanted to address that, Ed, because I got a lot of messages in the chat that it would have been the more probable route would have been going all the way further east and then coming back west. But the route that I took was the shortest route and the quickest route. The other one added about 18 minutes onto the drive. Anyways, he says a couple of interesting things here at the end, so I want to let this play.
Did he stop killing in 2010? That seemed to be extraordinary that he would do that.
Yeah, we don't know. And that's why we're going to go through his house, his place of work, any storage facilities that he has. And once again, there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but there's other things that he might have been a part of when it comes to violent acts. We're going to attach it to him.
You found a secret storage room in his basement with more than 200 guns. What was he doing with all that firepower?
Can't say. That's something that he himself knows only, but I know he was a hunter. But regarding the amount of guns and what he was using them for, I can't speak upon that.
He's married. He has 2 children, grown children. His daughter worked for him at his architectural firm. What was their reaction to this arrest? Are you confident they knew nothing about what he was doing?
Well, I will say this: they were shocked. we had some of our investigators assigned to the task force.
So he said that his wife and his two children, his grown adult girls, were shocked.
Mhm.
I thought this Elizabeth Vargas asked some really good questions, and she's not done yet, but she really asked some tough questions. And you heard him confirm there that he didn't say, yes, it was 200 guns, but he didn't say, no, you're wrong. So
Mhm.
that secret stash in the basement, all I got to say about that is, wow, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
I'll say this, we were shocked. We had some of our investigators assigned to the task force brief the mother and the two kids regarding what's going on and what's going to be the next steps. And what I'm being told based upon that initial interaction, they were shocked and as well as more than likely probably very, very embarrassed.
When your officers showed up to arrest Mr. Heuermann, he reportedly began to cry and say that he didn't do this. He had been obsessed with your task force and what it was doing. I'm just curious what his reaction was when you showed up to his door with a warrant.
So we didn't show up to his door with a warrant. What we did do is when he walked out of his place of business, we approached him and told him, hey, listen, you're going to be under arrest. Once again, there's a lot of things that I could talk about regarding when we grabbed him in the vicinity of 35th and 5th and transported him out here to Suffolk County headquarters. But he definitely was very quiet in the vehicle during the transport back and didn't say too much regarding his role in the case.
You have spared no words, Commissioner, about Rex Heuermann. You've called him a monster, a predator, and a demon who walks among us.
That's right. You see what he's done. He's ruined families. He destroyed lives. And this is somebody who needs to be held accountable and needs to go to jail for the rest of his life. These are the things that law enforcement officials, this is what we have to deal with. I want to make sure I acknowledge the members of the task force that really did a phenomenal job over the last 18 months putting the case together and identifying Rex Heuermann, and now he's in custody.
So he said it really well. He acknowledges investigators, Ed. That's important as a leader. You can hear his voice is down because he's probably given a lot of interviews. He's been all over the place, but a lot of confirmation here. Talked about his wife and his two adult children being devastated. I truly believe that they're victims as well because he was leading a double life and right under their noses. So it's a tough pill to swallow. Ed, I wanted to get back to you with the evidence collection at this crime scene. Let me pose this question to you. And, you and I have had this conversation on many different live streams, but for the new people, because there's quite a few new subscribers here and folks in the chat, let's just say, hypothetically, he brought one or more of these victims back to his home. He lured them to his home, killed them, and there was some type of blood or some type of evidence that he cleaned up way back when. What is the possibility? And I know there's many different variables that are thrown in here, but what is the possibility of crime scene coming in there and extracting blood or showing blood in the walls, in the floors? Take it, the whole 9 yards or the whole spectrum here, Ed.
Despite killer's best efforts, there's still going to be evidence left behind, and it'll last there many years. It depends on the flooring, depends on the methods used to try to clean up the crime scene. So if, there was blood let and he has tongue and groove hardwood flooring or even engineered flooring or a pergo, it doesn't really matter, that they have tongue and groove. Well, if that blood is going to flow and seek its low points, follow gravity, and it'll get down in those areas. And yeah, sure, you'll be able to mop up the surface stuff, but you're not getting the stuff that's down there in the cracks or on the subfloor underneath it, unless you pick up that flooring and remove it and then replace it and clean it up. There's, as I showed you in the past when we did some of the Forensic Fridays on blood, there's all kinds of blood stain chemicals that we could use to try to find it. There's Blue Star, Luminol, Leucocrystal Violet, Amino Black. There's all these different chemicals that we can use and spray on surfaces. There's infrared photography. There's UV lights. that we could use to try to see underneath the paint if there might be blood underneath a fresh coat of paint, or multiple layers of paint that maybe there was blood on it, couldn't get it all off, and they decided to paint over it. Well, that blood is still going to be there under the paint, and if you have the right tools and the equipment, you can find that. Hairs and fibers, skin cells, DNA. Again, could be in the carpets, could be in the house, hairs and fibers. You can see how important those hairs and fibers were, because his hair and his wife's hair were found on some of these victims. Okay. And they got the mitochondrial DNA and so forth to match back. And then we learned later that they did discarded DNA searches for the family as well, not just the suspect. They got the wife's DNA, the kid's DNA, and ran that through searches and so forth with some of the evidence that they had found. So now they're in they're in his house, they're in his office, they're in his storage facilities, they got his car. They're going to be tearing these places apart, trying to strengthen the cases that they already have with these currently the indictments that they currently have. And then they're also going to try to shore up at least one case. They're pretty close to charging him for at least one more case, but they're going to try to find the other evidence that links him to those other bodies. Now, when you talk about killing somebody and dismembering them, well, that's typically a planned event. You don't do this on the fly, and you need someplace secure, someplace where you feel safe, somewhere that's secluded. So like your house when your family's away on vacation in another country, or a storage facility. I hope they're getting video, security video, because most storage facilities have security video, and they can see if there's any correlations between the time of these deaths and disappearances of these victims, and maybe his presence at the storage facilities. Okay. So they have their work cut out for us. They're not going to leave one stone unturned. They're dotting their I's, they're crossing their T's, and they're tearing everything up.
Ed, thank you for explaining that so well. But you brought up something that I have in my notes to ask you. The mitochondrial DNA, and I know I'm not saying it right, that new method that was not available back in the early days of this investigation. Can you describe in layman's terms what the difference is in the two methods and how important this was going forward?
I'm not sure the district attorney got that right. When I questioned him at what he said at the press conference, in 2010, we had mitochondrial DNA. That wasn't anything new. Okay. I don't know what he was talking about. Was there a problem because the hair suffered decomposition and damage because of its exposure in the environment there, and it wasn't yielding a genetic profile for mitochondrial DNA? If with hair, if you have the root, normally in the past technology, if you had the root, you can get cellular DNA, which means you're going to get the DNA of the parents, both parents. If you didn't have the root on hair in the past, this is before 2010, you could only get the mother's DNA from the shaft of the hair without the root. So that's why it's called mitochondrial, for the mother. And you get the mother, and that would link, through mother's DNA to the suspect. Next, now it's snippet. As we learned by the great doctor that was on our show, you can get both sets of parents now from the shaft of the hair now that you couldn't get in the past. So is he referring to that? Did they do some kind of that type of DNA testing on the hair to extract both parents and then make the match to the discarded DNA that they collected? I'm not sure exactly what he meant when we needed the technology wasn't there back in 2010 to do what they did. So I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to.
Right. And that's why I led you into that, Ed, because I knew that you and I spoke about that. And people were just confused because Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick, we had her on and she was telling us all about all these different testing methods and so forth. So it had me scratching my head. I propose this, maybe, and obviously the district attorney and all of the folks that were in charge are no longer in charge. maybe someone dropped the ball and didn't utilize that type of testing that was available to them. And this is maybe his way of lightly putting it, because we also have in the 32-page bail application, I have tons of notes on this thing. There was messages and notes put down in the cell phone data recovery that in the initial investigation, some of these decedent cell phone records and were not pulled as part of the investigation. So they didn't have, and you saw it, it was in parentheses. I think it was on page, I'm going to look through here, but I have notes down at the bottom right here. Page 10, unfortunately, cell site records for the burner cell phone used to contact Mrs. Barnes were not obtained at the time of her disappearance and no longer exist. And of course, they didn't know about the suspect right now, but they're talking about if they would have utilized and downloaded her cell phone records back in the day when this happened in 2009, they would have had a match to these burners, but they didn't. Yeah. They didn't get that information. So I caught on to that, and I was just like,
yeah. And they didn't do all that triangulation work, and they didn't have the information about the vehicle at that time, and all the things started really coming together in 2022.
Right. Police Commissioner James Burke was at the helm at that time, and other police commissioners. We talked about the Irish fella, and he was there a long time, and I'm sure he did great work. But there was a lot of shady stuff that was intertwined into this thing. There's another piece before we get into our second half of what I want to talk to you about. This was from this morning, and it was the district attorney, again, asked a lot of questions, but the reason I want to play this is because a few things that he said was interesting, and I think I want everyone to hear it. This is from Fox 5 New York, and I love that all the times that we cover these cases, we're always playing outside of our area's news. This is our local news. This is actually, this story is local to me and also to Ed, because Ed lives, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from this, these crimes. So this is a local case for us. So let's let this
evidence against the man suspected of the Gilgo Beach killings.
Yeah, that man, Rex Heuermann, a Long Island architect, has been charged with murder in the deaths of 3 of the 11 victims and a long unsolved string of killings. Prosecutors say, Heuermann had burner phones and a long internet history containing at least 200 searches about the investigation into the Gilgo murders.
And joining us now, Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney with details about this special task force and investigation that led to the arrest of Heuermann. I mean, this has been over a decade in the making. One of the top investigators saying this guy was a demon. And it just sticks with you, but also, very congrats on your team and hats off to you guys, because this is a long time coming.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. Yeah, I got into office January of 2022. We formed the task force. We had our first meeting in February 1st of 2022. And then by March 14th of 2022, after reviewing all the evidence in the case, we had honed in on this defendant.
When you're talking about an avalanche of evidence, what does that look like? And I know there's also maybe a fourth person that he's been linked to. Why are we not there yet with a fourth person?
Well, we utilize the grand jury because the grand jury gives you 2 advantages. You have the ability to subpoena records, call witnesses, but also you have secrecy. Mm-hmm. So we were, utilizing the grand jury. We were working through the case, and then towards last Thursday, we had given the potential danger and also potential disclosure of our investigation.
When you say potential danger, what does that mean?
Well, the defendant lived a very atypical life. He bifurcated his life, and he was still continuing to use burner phones, still continuing to communicate with sex workers.
Wow.
So that was obviously.
So I want to stop it right there, because I want everyone to understand what he just said. And people could just skip over it, because New Yorkers, we all talk pretty quick. But he basically said there was a danger because of the searches he was doing. Ed and I talked about it and covered it. But he was also trying to communicate and possibly make arrangements to meet sex workers. And what is his track record? In the past, he's met sex workers and they are dead. So that's what I believe was the reason they sped it up ahead and made this arrest. Ed, you got something up on the screen? You want to talk about it?
Yes. Thank you for the $10. And basically, mitochondrial testing uses short tandem repeats, STR, and markers, and autosomal DNA testing uses snippets, simple nucleotide polymorphism. Okay, spot on. We talked about this in numerous episodes. Now, again, during around 2010, SNP DNA was not prevalent or used at that time. Maybe that's what he was referring to, but I just didn't understand exactly what he meant. There was no clarification from it, and I couldn't find it in any of the supporting documents that from the arraignment and or the bail hearing. But hey, they got the DNA match. That's all that counts now. Okay. And now let's see if we can match them up to these other victims and get closure on those cases that are still outstanding.
Absolutely. There's a couple more things that he says here, and then we'll come back on.
Full life, he bifurcated his life, and he was still continuing to use burner phones, still continuing to communicate with sex workers.
Wow.
So that was obviously very concerning. Obviously, we had him under surveillance, but still. Early evening Thursday, the decision was made. We need to put him in custody.
To move in. What was the smoking gun in this case?
I think the smoking gun was first off forming the task force and bringing in really great analysts and investigators from a number of agencies and putting them directly in contact with our prosecutors.
But what was that piece that said, this is our guy?
Well, first of all, looking at everything, and then on March 14th, that's when the name Rex Heuermann first came as a suspect, and that was as a result of one of the state police investigators realized that he owned this Chevy Avalanche, which was the vehicle driven by a man that last saw the last victim, Amber Costello, alive, and that individual was described very distincly, very large man. Very heavily built, glasses, white, thick hair, thick dark hair. And when we saw that Heuermann matched that description, but not only that, earlier in the investigation in 2012, the FBI had established these areas of interest in Massapequa Park, as well as Midtown Manhattan, as far as cell phone usage and areas where these cell phones were being used. And Heuermann, he lived in Massapequa Park and he worked in Midtown Manhattan within that same area. So these were very compelling factors.
And Ed, I remember when the police commissioner Hart was in command in Suffolk County, she made the revelation of the belt buckle with the initials on there.
Yes.
There was that conversation about Midtown Manhattan, and it was all very vague. They didn't really explain the significance. And now we come to find out through this bail application, 32 pages, why Midtown Manhattan was a place of importance.
Yeah, and the digital evidence here, the cellular phone evidence, and the cell phone triangulations, his burner phones in connection with his personal phone, victims' phones, all of this information ties together nicely. Midtown and Massapequa Park.
100%, and there's numerous pages in this. I'll link, if you guys haven't seen this, I'll link this 32-page document in the description. I know, Ed, you have it. There's actually all different examples and so forth inside these 32 pages of exactly what they did. And there's so much. And I spoke with our cell phone expert, Tiffany Leonard. She was on with us. She's from New Jersey, and she's done an extensive amount of, cell phone data and recovery. She was baffled with all the information that she was reading in this 32 pages. I just want to play another minute of what he said, because there's one more thing he said in here, and then we'll get ready to wrap it up with some Q&A Ed, would it be all right for you to take some questions from the audience?
Sure.
All right, sounds good. So let's let this play, and then we'll be right back.
And then, of course, then now you go back to the crime scene, and you've got these 5 questionnaires, which were unsuitable for regular DNA, but we did mitochondrial DNA.
That brings me to my next question. Talk about the advancement of technology. I mean, we're talking a decade ago these murders took place.
Sure. So the 4 women were murdered between 2007 and 2009. September of 2009 was the last murder. They weren't discovered till September of 2010. They weren't discovered until late 2010, and in that harsh environment, there wasn't a lot of evidence except for these hairs, which originally were not suitable for nuclear DNA testing, but regarding advancements, we're able to do mitochondrial DNA.
Does that make a little more sense there?
Well, that's what I thought he was trying to refer to. You couldn't get nuclear DNA because he's saying the hairs didn't have a root. Okay. But in 2010, we had been doing mitochondrial DNA for some time, so some amount of years before 2010. So I didn't understand, and I still don't understand why he's saying with the advent of mitochondrial. Well, mitochondrial has been around a lot longer than 2010.
Right.
Right.
Look at the question that's coming in here. This is starting early on this one. We don't even have, the ball is just, the wheels of justice are just starting to spin. Have an easy day says, in Suffolk County, do the courts allow cameras? On some cases they do, and some cases they don't. It's all depending on what the judge says.
There's a question in the chat about where the family is right now. Well, with these warrants and law enforcement taking control of their house, they're probably put up in a hotel.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Unless they went and got their own, housing from family members.
And probably have protection by the police, because they definitely probably won't feel pretty safe and secure wherever they are because of these allegations against her husband and their father. The wife, according to the 32-page document, the bail application, as they call it, visited Iceland and was also outside of the New York area into, I believe, Maryland and Connecticut, correct, Ed? Or Jersey and Maryland?
There was Maryland and New Jersey, yes.
Yeah.
Maryland and New Jersey and Iceland. Now, I was wondering if they the task force got wind that they were planning another vacation or a trip someplace with just her and her children, leaving hubby behind, which could be another reason to go out and grab him before he killed again.
Right. Yeah. So Joey Brooklyn, I saw a bunch of people in the chat. It's just that, when we're doing this, it's kind of hard to break off when we're talking about DNA and evidence collection. But we have only heard about the home in Massachusetts early on in this case, and then there's never been any mention of it after that. Maybe there's a reason why they're keeping that quiet. Maybe there are things going on at that residence. But if you look at this guy and you look at his name, which is not a common name, there's not many, Rex Heuermanns running around there. When you search online, there's a residence here, which is his lifelong residence. His family, his dad died when he was younger. His mom transferred the ownership to him at some point or time. And then there's a second residence, but we haven't really heard anything. If that is of any significance or comes into play, we'll all be hearing about it. But right now, we've heard nothing about it.
Now, you would think if his personal phone and his burner phones were being used in the state of Massachusetts, that information would be known by law enforcement as well.
I would think so.
And then you would probably have to reach out to law enforcement in that state to search their records for unsolved homicides where the bodies have been dumped or dismembered and found in wooded areas or whatever the case may be.
And maybe he's a hunter, and that's like a hunting shack or a hunting. You know what? My memory's starting to jar me better. It was the attorney, John Ray, who represents Jessica Taylor and Shannon Gilbert. He made the mention of the dual residence. I have that video. I played it, I think, in my very it was my second video I made on since he was apprehended. So John Ray is the attorney for the two victims. He made that mention. So I'm hoping that maybe he'll elaborate a little bit more on that. Put in the chat, folks, hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon, and your question, and we'll highlight it. If you want, you could put, this is the one and only time I'll tell you, put it in capital so we could see it, because the chat's kind of moving fast. We're going to get ready to wrap up. Ed's got a busy night ahead of him. He's got a lesson plan for 200 people, maybe for tomorrow. I don't know what this guy's got going on, but I just want to let you guys know that tomorrow night, I'm going to have former CIA officer and retired FBI agent Tracy Waldner. She's going to be joining us. I am going to question and ask her about the FBI component as it pertains to the perpetrator in this Gilgo Beach murder. So she's going to be joining me tomorrow night. I don't know if Ed Wallace is available, because I would always like to have his expertise there. But 2 nights in a row, that might be an overtime day, and my budget just is just not good enough for overtime for Ed. Ed's overtime rate's $1,200 an hour. So. All right. Did we see anything in the chat? DutyRon, Robin, Ohio says, did Rex watch Better Call Saul being on burner phones? Yeah.
Not only did he have burner phones, folks, but he had a bunch of fraudulent emails that he had set up, email addresses that he was using various names. Yeah.
Yeah. Tons of aliases, tons of fictitious email addresses attached. And it was funny, Ed, I know that you pay attention to detail. All of his stuff came back to his American Express account. So all of his expenses and stuff that was used, like when they ask you for a credit card to create an email or create an account, when he formed his Tinder account, he uses the American Express card. Magical Mary, what do you got, Ed?
Well, she's asking if we knew when he was remarried, and I don't know. I don't have any information on that. Then I see another one here. What degree of difficulty does it add to the forensic search of a house if in need? Here he was a hoarder. Well, first of all, I've been to several crime scenes where hoarders are involved, and a lot of them were accidental deaths. And you know how they died?
How?
They had stacked up all of their belongings and created these little tunnels, like a tunnel rat in Vietnam. And the tunnels collapsed on them, and there was positional asphyxiation by compression of their back onto the floor, where the point they couldn't breathe anymore. So these are now hazards to the crime scene investigators, because you have to meticulously break down the way they stored all of their materials and safely remove it so it doesn't collapse on you.
Wow.
While you're trying to make entry and get in there. So it's like an archaeological dig in some of these hoarding, and it can be very dangerous to the crime scene investigators. Plus, you don't know what's all in these things. It could be hazardous materials. It could be all kinds of different things that the person is hoarding in different boxes and packages that you have no idea what's in them until you carefully remove them. It's like the Kimes case, the mother and son con artists. They had all of their worldly belongings that was at one point in the trunk of their car, but they took it out of the trunk and put it in the back seat of the car, and it piled up from the floor to the ceiling and the back seat of the car, so they can empty the trunk to put Mrs. Silverman's body in there. And I had to slowly remove piece by piece and document with photographs and measurements and sketches as I removed something out and placed it on a clean tarp and moved that tarp to the side, and then got a new clean tarp, changed gloves, changed PPE, moved the next item out. It's very time consuming.
Wow. That's amazing. And Ed, you talked about that case many times in the past. I remember you bringing it up. But yeah, it's troubling to have to deal with all of those obstacles. Misdemeanor, retired NYPD. Yes, the remains from Southern State Parkway exit 40 were that of a 20-year-old that went missing on an Indian reservation out in Manorville, Long Island. So I don't believe it had anything to do with Rex Heuermann. Why do I always get stuck on that? But I don't think it had anything to do with him. It was a 20-year-old man that went missing on an Indian reservation, and he was found at that location. So thank you for your question. Here's one from Nat B in Canada. Questions for DutyRon and Ed. Do you think that he hasn't heard anyone for the past 2 years? That's we said it earlier. Most of these guys don't just turn it off. And it seems clear and apparent that he didn't turn it off from his searches in the 16, 17 months of surveillance that they've had on him. Mail from Gina.
Okay. Would they use MVAC at the house if they have cause to suspect that there's possibly genetic materials there, depending on the surface? Yeah, I would definitely bring that out to the scene if they have it. Absolutely. Do you think there'll also be a search in the house in Mass? Yes, I would suggest that they go up there and take a look. I mean, he could have those trophies hidden up there. He could have scrapbook collections of his killings and his dirty deeds hidden up there. So yeah, go up there and take a look. It can't hurt. Okay. Right. Do you think the toddler Doe is related victim? It wouldn't surprise me if one of the sex trade workers had the baby with them and brought the baby
while turning tricks.
It wouldn't surprise me that there's some connection there.
A lot of great questions coming in. Again, if we miss your question, just copy and paste it and repost it. We'll try to get to as many as we can because we're going to wrap it up. Ed, while you're looking at these questions, you want to answer this one? I want to play this girl on TikTok's claims that she was in a group with him, and her name is Call Me Dominique. Her name is Dominique Vidal, and she plays a voicemail from Rex, and it's his voicemail.
Yeah.
I just never got a chance to verify the authenticity.
Hey, it's Rex.
Yeah. So I have that here. What do we got? Question for DutyRon and Ed.
Do you think he hasn't heard anyone in the last 10 years? I'd be surprised. It's only the last 2 years that they came on to him, got on to him.
Really less than two.
Less than 2 years.
So he was identified March 14th of 2022.
22, right?
16 months.
So,
let me put this on so we can let everybody listen to this. Where did it go? Okay, there we go.
Voicemail from Rex Heuermann. He left this for me end of February after I left the group. Previous to that, he did call me a couple of times. I answered the phone, nothing really significant. I found it odd. He was calling me because he had no work for me. I had no work for him. There was no ongoing relationship. We were just two people who used to be in the same networking group. So, take a listen, share your thoughts. There's nothing, incredibly scary about the voicemail besides the fact that he is the Gilgo Beach murderer.
Allegedly.
But yeah, enjoy, I guess.
Hey, this is Rex from the BNI group. I actually heard you are no longer part of the group. I still wanted to talk to you. I had a question for you. And also wanted to touch base. So if you get an opportunity, you can always try me at the office. Or feel free to use my cell. Mine.
She's blocking out the stuff.
Hope you're doing good. Hope to talk to you soon. Thanks.
What a creep. All right, so that was, people were interested in that, Ed, and I want to thank Dawn Marie for putting me on to that. I did see a shorter clip of that on the news. It's the news has picked this up as well, but that was Creepy Rex, and that was definitely his audio. But again, we weren't able to, who knows? I don't know where that audio came from, but seemed to be pretty legit to me. But definitely red flag says "Let It Be Summer." Lorna McKenzie says "Stalker vibes." Team Brittany says "I've reached my creep quota for tonight."
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, folks.
All right. Yes. So listen, we're going to continue to cover this tomorrow night. I don't know, Ed, you let me know if you're available. I'd love to have you on with Tracy. We're going to ask her about the FBI and their involvement, what they have to offer potentially to this task force. We know that I actually saw FBI when I was there on Sunday, yesterday. I saw state police. I saw Suffolk, Nassau, state police, it said state police crime lab was there as well. Guys wearing the tan pants with the tan shirts. So the state crime scene was there. FBI was there, and both the counties.
I understood the FBI did the bulk of the electronic evidence and cell phone evidence work.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, folks, it was a great show. I think we had a great show tonight.
Do us a favor. If you're not yet subscribed to Ed Wallace, Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed, give us a thumbs up, share this video out, leave us comments. We love the comments, right, Ed, down below in the comment section. Ed's been busy lately. He's got a lot on his plate. He's doing a lot of different things, between fixing foundations for his son and teaching 200 safety officers and all the things that Ed does, Edisms. The list is long. You see this 32-page document right here? Ed's honeydew checklist is 10 times the length of this. So he's got a lot on his plate and he's doing a lot. But yeah, leave us comments down below in the comment section, like and subscribe, and follow us on all things social media. One word, DutyRon. I'm thinking of changing it to DutyRon and Ed, all of my social media. And so this way it will haunt Ed for the rest of his life. And he'll never be able to escape it. But seriously, follow us on all things social media, DutyRon. It's a good way to get a hold of me and Ed, DutyRon.com. Check out our merch store and all of the great stuff that we have. I'll see you guys on the next one. As Ed always says, I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to let him say it.
Be safe. Be prepared. Watch your six.
And on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we send prayers, strength, and positive vibes to the victims' families.
Amen.
To all of the law enforcement officers and to those victims who are still do not have justice. We send them all of our strength and prayers, and hopefully there'll be closure for them and our unknown victims. I have a feeling there's many more victims out there that have yet to been recovered or discovered. All right, guys, good night from New York City. Ed Wallace and DutyRon. Peace, guys.